Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we got a ton of stories about censorship all the way from the UK to the EU to Canada, as well as I was watching a presentation of you as a kid talking about the left ventricle and the heart.
Okay.
And then I seen one of when she was, I don't know, how old were you there, 6 or 10?
I don't know.
She was really young, and then I was admiring her presentation skills now compared to where she started at.
Well, you can go to our old Spanish channel and watch me do
Oh
videos
my
in English.
God.
That's basically worse. That's worse than when I did
Yeah,
presentations when I was younger.
you were better at 6 years old than you were at, what, how old were you there, 27?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't reveal my age, but so let's start.
Oh, so let's start. Let's not talk about me.
So this is from Governor Greg Abbott from Texas, saying Texans don't run from the fight, they face it head on. These Texas Democrats that fled the state are not serving Texans, they are serving themselves. They forfeited their seats and are facing potential felony charges.
Yeah, and this is a lot of dirty politics kind of going on, not just in Texas. This goes on all across the United States, and the Democrats are actually most guilty of it. This time the Democrats are claiming it's the Republicans gerrymandering, but the Democrats gerrymander in so many different ways, it's almost unimaginable. They do it in ways that they don't even call gerrymandering. They'll flood illegals into the state, and even though they are not citizens, because they count towards the population, they get more seats in that state. Places like, especially Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, has been redistricted so many times, it's almost impossible for Republicans to even have a chance the way that's been gerrymandered. That being said, these senators from Texas are now running to Chicago, which is kind of funny because that's the place that's gerrymandered the most. Let's hear Greg Abbott talk about it.
Greg Abbott joins us now. Thank you so much. Can you tell us from your perspective, what is the issue? Why did they leave?
So they're leaving and they've left because they're very un-Texan. Texans don't run from a fight. And there's a fight going on in the legislature right now about redistricting as well as other things. But I'll make two quick points, Dana, about this. For one, to run to states like New York and Illinois to protest redistricting is kind of like running to Wisconsin to protest cheese. It's just kind of outrageous. Those are New York and Illinois are two hallmark states that have already done redistricting to eliminate Republicans.
Let's pause it for a second.
The second,
I don't want to get dinged.
Yeah.
That being said, I'd like to see all this gerrymandering kind of stop, but as long as one side does it, the other side kind of has to do it. It was done under the Biden administration and the previous administrations, such as Obama. Trump is playing politics this time. The first administration, he wasn't. This time he is. I would like to see it get cleaned up. I would also like to see voter ID get cleaned up. The fact that in a lot of states you don't need an ID to vote is another way of kind of rigging elections, or I would consider it gerrymandering as well.
thing is far more serious. And that is what these Democrats have done. Just a small fraction of them were needed to break a quorum, and that small fraction is holding hostage legislation in the state of Texas where we will be able to provide assistance and reform for all of the victims of that horrific flooding that we've had in the state of Texas. Our fellow Texans are being let down and not getting the flood.
Let's pause it again. And yeah, as much as I don't agree with gerrymandering, the fact that the Democrats aren't willing to do their jobs and stand in for a vote, this is the third time they've done it in just a couple of years in Texas alone. So he wants to now press criminal charges against them. I actually do agree with that. Just because you're going to lose a vote doesn't mean you don't vote and you neglect to do your job. So as much as I don't agree with gerrymandering, I definitely don't agree with these Democrats running states, hiding so they don't have to do their job so they don't lose a vote.
So from NPR, so take it with a grain of salt. Texas Democrats walked out to block the GOP. How well has the tactic worked before? More than 50 Texas Democratic lawmakers left this state on Sunday in an effort to block the passage of a controversial new redistricting map that would fulfill President Trump's desire to add up to 5 more Republican congressional seats in the White House. The move is called breaking quorum. The Texas House requires 100 members present to conduct business, but only has 88 Republicans. It needs Democrats in the room, even if it doesn't need their votes in order to enact a new map.
Let's pause it here. And a lot of people don't know, in recent times, actually, Texas was a Democratic state. And for a lot of its history, it was a Democratic state. Only recently has it switched to a Republican red state. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think the gun laws have always been extremely loose in Texas. That's not the case. They only recently got the rights to conceal carry and other measures. Oh, you can go back to the article there.
Where was I? If you're the minority party, you can't block any legislation. One nuclear option you always have is to walk out, thereby preventing the legislature from engaging in any activity and particularly passing legislation, explains a political science professor. By leaving the state for liberal strongholds such as Illinois and New York, dozens of Democrats are bringing the body to a standstill, at least for now. It's not clear how long they'll be able to stay away from their personal and financial obligations, especially since Texas's part-time legislative calendar means that many lawmakers hold second jobs.
Okay, and they have to stay away. They have to stay away for at least 2 weeks because this is a 2-week session if they want to actually do anything. That being said, they can be fined personally up to $500 a day. Plus, they're going to have to pay for food and room. I'm sure that's going to be funneled into them through the Democratic Party or something. Some other means through cash. They actually have to pay out of their own means. They're not allowed to use funds donated or given to them. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Maybe there can be an investigation there as well.
And I mean, it just shows that it just shows weakness to have to do that if you're that not confident in yourself as a legislator.
They know they're going to lose the vote, and they know it's a Republican state, and they do the exact same thing in Democratic states. The thing is, the Republicans usually don't leave because it compounds bad press. I was watching one of these Democrats that's hiding out in some hotel. He wouldn't say where he was from. He was on Pod Save America podcast today, trying to rally the troops. He just sounded kind of despicable, like he wasn't actually following the democratic process. On top of that, he was quoting Abraham Lincoln, or referring to a situation where Abraham Lincoln supposedly jumped out a window to avoid a vote, so he wouldn't lose that vote. So he's saying that him and the Democrats are much like Abraham Lincoln was.
Have Republicans done something similar? Because they're giving examples of Democrats doing this.
It's almost always Democrats in the modern sense, which is weird because the Democrats are constantly gerrymandering and doing these same tactics, only when it's done against them, they're just refusing to play government here.
And
people aren't going to really understand what's kind of going on here because it may not get super national or international press. Like, imagine they weren't willing to vote on the economy, or, what do you call the bills for the economy again?
Which ones?
When you're going to spend money.
My brain's not working today. I don't know.
Wait, the budget. Imagine they weren't going to vote on a budget, and that would bring the entire federal or state government to a standstill. The kind of pressure that would be put on them then for not doing their job would be absolutely ridiculous, because this is going to go under the radar and it won't have immediate effects. They're going to kind of get away with this most likely. Okay.
Yes. Moving on.
Yeah, we can move to the next story if you want. I don't know why I couldn't remember the word budget.
Well, today you had a little bit of an issue with
medications. I take medication for my back. I got, my back problem's just been a genetic issue from hell that came up later in life. I used to teach jiu-jitsu, wrestling, do a lot of physical fitness. Now I do YouTube because my back broke on me. Coming to Mexico, hopefully I can get some treatment for it. But for now, I have to take medication for it. I accidentally took double the medication and I passed out in the middle of the afternoon.
Like, not literally passed out, he fell asleep for a long time.
Yeah, I fell asleep for a long time.
But he's a little loopy, more than usual.
I was in a rush to do the morning show, so I took my pills and I didn't take them for my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday
Pillbox.
And then so I was like, oh, I didn't take my pills today. I took them again, and I got extremely tired.
So he's a little bit loopy today, and I mean, usually you're not super great with memory anyways.
Yeah,
Because the jujitsu has hit him in the head quite a few times. So.
Well, the pills are for inflammation, but they make me drowsy as well somewhat.
Yeah. And then today I've been trying to edit stuff all day, so my brain's kind of on that still, but here we go. From Wide Awake Media, speaking at the WEF, German politician Olaf Scholz denounces Elon Musk. We have freedom of speech in Europe. Everyone can say what he wants, even he's a billionaire. What we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions, then that is not freedom of speech, now is it?
No, and this is a little bit of an older clip, but I wanted to start with this because we're going to have a lot of freedom of speech articles and clips today. So I don't like to forget what these elites have done over the last few years, what they have said. Their words should come back to haunt them. And hopefully by replaying them and have people constantly rewatching them, they understand they still have these motivations. They're just trying to hide them. And he sounds reasonable right up until the end.
On the question of the dealing of Elon Musk, I had a lot of things to comment in the past because he was discussing a lot about Europe. And just to repeat what I already said, we have the freedom of speech in Europe and in Germany. Everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again.
And any position that's other than theirs, they do consider extreme right. Even moderate rights, especially in Germany and most of Europe, they're called extreme right. And
well, here I'm also called far right extremist.
We're actually going to go into the gerrymandering of EU elections through censorship. So it's very interesting what they do. They call something far right, then they have the justification to censor it because they have laws backing that up. Because during World War II, the mustache man, anything that's right wing has to be bad. So they legislate this stuff out of existence or punishment for it.
And also through notions like hate speech or far right, who is the one defining those things? And also what happens when, for example, someone from the far right gets in and starts saying that hate speech is actually all the speech coming from the left and all your little drag queen story hour things. Now that is censored. So people have to have a little bit more higher order thinking to look into the future to see what happens when you enact all of these censorship laws and how it could affect you in the future. Even if right now you're really for it, maybe at some point you might not be.
Well, they won't define what far right is. They don't even like to define what their principles are because their principles are constantly changing. There's not a set of non-moving moral standards or even positions. The left used to be the anti-war position. Now it's definitely on the right. So what are you saying?
Part of the right.
Like this is kind of crazy. Anything that's right wing is going to be censored, but anti-war is going to be on the right. Mm-hmm. But most people, like a lot of moderates or people that aren't involved in day-to-day politics, don't understand that a lot of these positions have changed. Mm-hmm. In America, people are very aware of it because Trump has kind of taken all the best positions from the left and brought them over to the right wing, such as anti-war with Tulsi Gabbard, with RFK. They brought health to the forefront, real health into the forefront, real environmentalism they're starting to bring to the forefront. Not this, we need to have carbon taxes so we can control and take people's freedoms away.
And free speech is a classical liberal position that was actually emanates from the UK. So it is insane now that what the European Union, Europe, and the UK are all trying to do, given that a lot of these concepts come from them and were protected by them for the longest time, and the US adopted it because they saw how important it was as well.
Well, Europe's trying to get ready for a war here. It's obvious that that's what they want to press this Russian situation into. They want to escalate this in to bring digital currency, digital ID, strip freedoms from their population, and flood their borders with immigrants against the wishes of their citizens. That being said, because they like to think of themselves as left-wing, as they get ready more and more for this war they want to propagate with Russia, they're adopting right-wing policies and calling them left-wing.
And to me, it's always funny when they start yelling like fascist or like man with a mustache, when it's them that are employing the tactics that a lot of dictators of the past and that is so the past, and etc. All of these crazy political ideologies that they try to lump on the right, they're actually the ones that are doing it, while the right is just demanding to hear their position. Like, I would never want to censor someone that's saying crazy left-wing things. I want to hear it out to counter it and then understand where they're coming from to get a better strategy to go against it.
Yeah,
That's
and-
the whole point of free speech.
And just so you know, we're not talking out of our ass. We're kind of setting up all of today's articles and clips from this initial clip. So you're going to see a lot of these thoughts and opinions that you may not agree with us with kind of work themselves out through the left wing's own words or the liberal progressive media's own words in the EU especially.
And this is actually not from the left, but it's someone trying to analyze what's happening in Europe. So Europe is being gaslit about freedom of speech by Lauren Smith.
Well,
Today.
it's just so shocking what's been going on in Europe with free speech, not just the EU, but the UK as well. The UK is almost the tip of the spear where they're testing a lot of this, and then the EU is bringing all of it in. So, like the Constitution, the freedom of speech ingrained in the U.S. Constitution is showing to be so important. It's probably one of the most important constitutional rights. Even in Canada, they have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It says you have free speech, except when, and they have all these times when you don't have free speech.
Yeah, it's called the notwithstanding clause. So within the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada, they have all of these, rights and freedoms that you have, but then in a bunch of them, they started adding notwithstanding clauses, which means unless this happens, and then we're able to, take back this right or take back this freedom that the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is giving you. But,
And the same thing is happening in Mexico here now. We left Canada for Mexico because it was a little bit more freedom through chaos. They claim to have free speech, but hate speech and feminist laws are coming in and trumping free speech.
and being like gender policies that are now legislatively instituted within Mexico are being used to censor people that are enemies of the current party in power.
And you're having forced re-education and public apologies through X, which is crazy. That's
Essentially what happened in Canada with Jordan Peterson, same thing is happening here. I made a whole video, it's on this channel, about Chicharito. But let's read a little bit to see the perspective of Europe.
Okay.
We can all see that free speech is under threat in Europe. It feels like every week a new horrific story about someone getting thrown in jail for having the wrong opinion goes viral. To the rest of the world, the continent has become a laughingstock. Americans in particular watch with horror as EU states punish their populations for criticizing governments or posting rude words on the internet. Elon Musk, owner of social media platform X, often draws global attention to these cases, to such an extent that even the US government has expressed alarm and concern that European citizens are in danger of totalitarian-style speech restrictions.
One moment, J.D. Vance and Trump have also called them out publicly, especially J.D. Vance. He's had some excellent speeches that he gave in front of the European Union directly to their face. That being said, because they're negotiating a tariff deal and there's other things going on right now, I think this issue has been put to the side for the American administration, but it will be coming back up, I guarantee you.
So why do our elites in Europe keep pretending none of this is happening? When asked about Musk and his criticisms of Europe at the WEF's annual meeting in Davos this January, when we just saw that clip, this was a display of an almost impressive lack of self-awareness. For starters, Schultz's statement is inherently a contradiction. Speech cannot be free if it is only protected for some people. Censoring anyone, even if they support extreme right positions, is still a violation of the most fundamental right. It also could not be further from the truth that free speech is safe today in either Germany or Europe as a whole. Under Schultz's own government, there were several cases of Germans being convicted, fined, and even jailed for comments they made online. Last year, a man was fined 600 euros for using the poop emoji to describe then Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck on X.
And one more thing, you're also getting fined for a prayer in your head. If a police officer comes up to you, suspects you of praying, asks you if you are praying, and then you admit to him that you are, you can be fined, which is insane. This is something J.D. Vance had brought up as well. J.D. Vance is very good at calling out these issues.
And this happened at This happens at abortion clinics in the UK. You're not allowed to protest. Some of it would now considered praying
silently in your head.
Some of it is not considered praying. And if you admit to an officer you're praying silently in your head, then they get mad at you. In a separate case, also last year, 64-year-old Stefan Niehoff had his house raided and tablet confiscated after he posted a meme on X calling Habek, who appears to be particularly sensitive to ridicule, an imbecile. Niehoff thankfully escaped conviction for this, but earlier this year was fined 825 euros for making another post on X that featured man with a mustache imagery, which Niehoff had argued was satirical. And then continues to go through a bunch of
and
cases.
now they're going a step further. So they bring these hate speech laws in and these feminist laws in about speech, where if you say anything negative against females as a whole, that is considered hate speech, and they can prosecute you on it. But even if you make a post and then you now delete it, even if it was only up for a few hours, they're now prosecuting people for those deleted posts, and that's going to kind of go into the next article we have.
Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah. Or do you want to continue to talk about this one a little bit?
I was
Continue to go, because we only have a few articles today anyway.
Just because of what we were talking about, the classification of the right-wing party in Germany, perhaps Scholz somehow failed to notice that under his watch, the German intelligence services classified the right populist Alternative for Deutschland, AfD party, as an extreme right-wing group. This was nonsensical and almost certainly politically motivated move. The AfD regularly competes for the top spot in opinion polls and is currently the second largest party in the Bundestag. The 10.3
one moment, and this is kind of how free speech reared its head in Europe first, but then it expanded more to the general population. They brought it in to kind of silence other political groups on social media with their ads and bringing up issues that would hurt left-wing parties like immigration. So if you speak about immigration in the EU, it can be considered hate speech. This severely hurts right-wing parties because it's an important issue to the people, but these parties can't openly speak about it. On top of that, it's very weird because even though they're censoring social media, very often when they do lose an election, they'll claim that social media was rigged against them from foreign interference like Russia. This happened in Romania. They're claiming the right-wing candidate had help from Russia with social media, which ended up being completely false, but they still were able to disqualify them from the election.
So if Germany's track record on free speech is bad, the European Union's is even worse. The EU has no qualms at all about silencing those who push back against its orthodoxy and is constantly looking to expand its already vast censorship regime. Yet incredibly, Scholz isn't the only member of the European establishment trying to gaslight us about free speech. In the EU, EU President Ursula von der Leyen declared in 2024 that in protecting our democracy, we will always respect our enduring commitment to preserving and promoting free speech. Months earlier in January, also at Davos, where apparently they all feel very safe to say, go further into what they actually plan to do, she announced that misinformation and disinformation were the gravest issues facing the world ahead of conflict or climate change, and warned that countries and companies needed to do more to crack down on it.
Yeah, they're claiming that they need to protect their population from mis and disinformation from foreign governments. That's how they like to frame it. Just like when they strip your other freedoms, they're claiming it's in the need of protection and safety. But what they're doing is actually censoring their own citizens from even having conversations amongst each other, or they're censoring parties within their own countries from even bringing up certain issues. They're trying to build guardrails so only certain issues are acceptable for political parties to actually fight for.
And especially, ideas become very dangerous if they actually make people look at the state of the government, the country, themselves, and act upon it. That is what a lot of governments are very scared about.
Yeah.
I'd say especially here
They're
Mexico.
trying to build their own moral hierarchy that people won't go outside of, and they're trying to do it through speech censorship. The right typically takes a little bit different of a view. Their moral foundation comes more from religion that's kind of set and non-moving, that tends to put guardrails on politics. And that's why it's nice if politics and religion are somewhat separate, two different power bases.
Yes, because it has been used in the past, like very long ago, to also censor people. But
that's
getting to the middle would be a good idea.
But that's also when religion and politics were much more merged.
Intertwined.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's nice that religion and politics are somewhat separate, and then religion can bring a moral foundation kind of into politics of what's acceptable and not to the general people.
Mm-hmm. And continuing with the craziness, Holy S, UK's descent into tyranny, people are being jailed for deleted posts more severe than child People that do disgusting things to children. This is authoritarianism with a British accent. Carney plans new Internet Safety Act in fall. Mark Carney, who's paying attention. And they've been planning that in Canada for a long time as well.
They've tried it a couple of times now, and they're so draconian, these laws they're trying to bring in. They want to not put people in front of regular courts for speech censorship, but tribunals and councils that are outside the regular legal system. And then they want to be able to jail people for up to 20 years and have massive monetary fines. That was one of the reasons we kind of left Canada, because if that law passed, we would have been subject to it.
Maybe.
No, definitely.
In 1984 called, and he wants its Ministry of Truth back. The UK has created an elite police unit known as the National Internet Intelligence Investigations Team, dedicated to monitoring anti-migrant social media posts. Leaders claim its purpose is to detect early signs of potential unrest.
And pause it real quick. And we have to remember, even the United States had something like this. They had the Ministry of Disinformation, and that was under Biden. It was taken apart under Trump once he got in. But if you think you're safe in the States just because Trump's in office now, they are bringing in a digital wall, a digital surveillance system, digital IDs, potentially digital currency. If another administration takes over after him, you don't know which direction they're going to go in. So even in the United States, I would be very wary of a lot of the censorship that's going on around the world, because it kind of builds the legal framework.
And specifically in the UK in the past few weeks, 2 weeks, we've seen a lot of protests starting to come up, almost grassroots, in front of a lot of the hotels that are housing migrants. So this is maybe a way to try to counter that. Well, it is a way to try to counter that.
This protest and counter-protest had erupted after a 38-year-old asylum-seeking migrant was charged with sexual assault for attempting to kiss a 14-year-old girl.
If you can rewind it.
Despite
To where?
I was going to comment on that when you started talking there. Just play it from here.
Because I don't want him to say essay again.
Okay, well, we can stop the clip if you want.
No,
Okay,
don't
then-
get all pissy.
38-year-old asylum-seeking migrant was charged with sexual assault for
Okay,
attempting to kiss a 14-year-old
You keep
girl.
talking every time I want. Never mind. Okay.
He was charged with SA for kissing and doing disgusting things to a 14-year-old
No, that's
girl.
not what was said.
That is
And
what
you,
was said.
No, that's not what was said.
Because I know the story.
That's not what was said, though.
Yes,
No, it wasn't. Everybody just heard it if you weren't
What was
talking.
said?
I had watched this before.
I know the story as well.
They said for kissing a 14-year-old minor. The story is he did more than kiss a 14-year-old minor, and that's what I wanted to comment on.
Okay.
But you keep talking over it, and
Because I don't want YouTube to censor us. Speaking of censorship.
you
But
comment
we'll
on this, and
continue.
then we'll go into the next
No,
story.
we'll continue. Put on your headphones.
despite the surveillance,
People don't like to see us fight, they say.
I'm not fighting.
UK's prime minister insists he still believes in free speech.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time here.
Pause it
So,
there.
we're very
And every time they brought up free speech in front of Keir Starmer when Trump was there, he would jump in really quick, shut down the reporter, say, no, we have free speech. We have free speech. And then he would just go on, and then he would ask another question to another reporter that wouldn't ask about free speech.
proud about that. We protect it.
Well, with us now to react is public news founder Michael Schellenberger. Michael, it is true.
And this is going to be quite a long clip, so we will pause it quite a few times and interrupt, but it is fairly important.
And Michael Schellenberger is great as well.
True that the United Kingdom and the West has a fairly robust tradition, longstanding when it comes to free speech, but I'm not so sure that's true anymore. I mean, there's story after story about people being thrown behind bars in the UK, even for tweets
And let's
that
pause
they
it
have.
really quick. And we have to remember the EU, the UK are not at war right now. Ukraine is. If this war escalates and there's talk about the EU sending 250,000 troops, it's also rumored that Trump is now going to start funding that war to $55 billion. The talk started today about that, and they're going to do that openly. If that does happen, and eventually the EU does declare a state of war, all new speech rules come in, and they're all legal. So if they're doing this in a non-time of war, I can only imagine what's going to happen to the internet and general speech. People are going to be locked up for no reason.
Hopefully not, but
Deleted with longer prison sentences than people who've committed actual physical violent crimes.
Yeah, that's right, Guy. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story. I mean, there's a woman that's in prison for 31 months which is 4 months longer than a child rapist is in prison. And what all she did was have a tweet up for 4 hours that she ended up taking down. This is a sweeping crackdown on free speech in Great Britain that we have not seen anything like in maybe hundreds of years. I mean, it's really astonishing. It's happening on multiple levels. Keep in mind, they were already arresting 30 people a day for wrong speech in Britain before this. Now they have a...
For memes, wrong speech, the one lady only had her post up for 4 hours. It wasn't even that inappropriate. What I think they're trying to do is normalize this without justification. So if a state of war is declared, then they do have justification, but people are already used to it. And with the justification on top of it, they'll literally just start arresting people that complain about it. Okay, let's go back to this.
Special police task force to constantly monitor social media, including X, formerly Twitter, and they can stop content based on age verification. So they can stop content saying, oh, this is harmful to mental health. And then X recently, just a few days ago, did block content on the basis of the British order to be able to identify if people were old enough to see it. So the other thing you mentioned there was the Islamophobia. They're not going to allow people to criticize mass migration. They're going to call it Islamophobia and a hate crime and prevent it. So this is George Orwell. I mean, George Orwell perfectly predicted this in 1984 when he wrote his book in the mid-40s.
You know, Michael, I was just in Europe.
You can say whatever you want to get about Christianity, but when it comes to Islam or other religions, they will arrest you for these things and call it hate speech. Mm-hmm. And this is why hate speech laws cannot trump free speech laws. And again, the fact that they're doing this without justification in a non-time of war is appalling. Mm-hmm. Okay, do you want to play the rest of the clip?
Oh, I thought we were done.
At a conference and talking to a number of the people there. I mean, they are married to this idea that you have to monitor the internet, that you shouldn't be able to say certain basic things, including posting memes or things that are counter to what they believe politically in terms of the political party that's in charge. It's not just the UK, it's also the EU. They have this new Digital Services Act, which is complicated trade between the United States and the European Union. And even the deal that the president just got, it's it's an issue that has not been satisfied according to the administration.
And the reason they have all these organizations, they have the UN, they have the EU, then you have the UK, and they put these different types of Ministry of Disinformation, all these censorship-based ministries in there. So even if you do manage to get past one, you won't get past another. If you happen to travel from, say, the UK to the EU, you may have not broken the UK's law, but you did break the EU's law. There's extradition treaties. So they're going to get you one way or another with their infrastructure of censorship. They make sure it's not just one layer. It's multi-layered, like a web of censorship. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can go into the next article if you want.
Sure. I couldn't actually get that one specifically, but I do have one on Lucy Connolly, just in general.
Okay.
So this is from May 20th when it happened, but it's a woman that was jailed for race hate posts on X lost her appeal. A conservative counselor's wife who was jailed for inciting racial hatred after an online rant against migrants on the day of the Southport attacks.
And one moment, this came on the day of attack on little children. She was very upset. Mm-hmm. Because this was happening to children. A lot of people are upset with the grape gangs in their own communities, with children being assaulted. When it comes to children, it causes outrage. And
as it should.
And if you don't let people speak up about the outrage and violence that's happening against children, eventually they're going to start taking things into their own hands, and it's going to be more than speech. Mm-hmm. Speech is an outlet in order to let off some steam for the general public.
And to highlight injustices and speak up about things that are actually happening. When it's censored, it means someone's trying to hide something.
Yeah.
Conservative counselor's wife, who was jailed for inciting has had her appeal against her sentence dismissed. Lucy Connolly from Northampton was jailed for 31 months in October after calling for mass deportation now and urging her followers on X to set fire to hotels housing asylum seekers. This tweet was viewed 310,000 times before it was deleted. Her husband, Ray, a member of Northampton Town Council, said he was heartbroken that the Court of Appeal had ruled that there was no arguable basis on which it could be said that the sentence was imposed by the judge was manifestly excessive.
Yeah, and this is the thing. The immigration censorship is so important to the EU now. They didn't have to have it before because there was no country taking the opposite approach and being successful at it. So if every country in the world was just allowing mass immigration, it was easy to kind of justify and say, oh, we can't do anything. The laws are in the way. And then Trump comes in there and just completely shuts down the border, starts deporting people. And now there's a framework to show, well, that country is doing it. All these citizens of these countries in the EU and the UK are pointing at Donald Trump. They're raising Trump flags and saying, he's doing it. We want you to do what he's doing. And they're rather than address that issue and saying, well, even though it's working with Trump, we still can't do it. They're just censoring everybody and saying we can't do it. They don't want the subject coming up, and it's coming to protests in the street. Then they're censoring the protests themselves, so they're not making it to social media. They're making American social media companies do the censorship work of the government.
And also because if they acknowledged it or acknowledged a bigger problem, they would have to admit that what they have been doing and the liberal world order, let's just call it that way, or globalism has not worked. And they'd have to admit that their whole framework for how do they try to shape the world, not just Europe or the UK, but everywhere, does not work and what to do next. To actually have to take care of the issues that are at hand would take very long, a lot of effort, and also they would completely destroy what they've been espousing for so long.
Well, and you have to realize they really don't want the immigration issue to come up because that issue is linked to hundreds of other issues that are probably even far more important, but the root cause is often immigration. Why people can't get jobs, why there's overcrowding, why housing is going up so much, why is there violence, why is there rape gangs, why is there violence against children? I mean, I can go on and on and on, but all these issues that are now popping up in that society, they don't mind if this issue kind of pops up in isolation, but they don't want immigration to come up because then all the tentacles can be exposed.
And it connects the dots too much about what has been done.
Yeah.
And Walker, hello Walker. We hadn't seen you around here for a while. Thank you for being here. Hopefully everything's okay. And Walker says, I'm old and I remember how the violence began in El Salvador. It began with exaggerated permissiveness, except we didn't have the money to calm down like Europe with the welfare state. That's why the degeneration here in terms of security was rapid and abrupt.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes not having a welfare state or for having money for the government to hand out, which they can hand out, especially if they get a digital currency, they can hand it out with controls, meaning as long as you stay in line, you continue to get your monthly stipend, and that's how they can get the population in check, and that's why digital currency is so dangerous. And countries that are too poor to give out a stipend or free money to their population will uprise when they're unhappy.
Yeah, and even if you think everybody's very happy with Bukele in El Salvador, it's not the case as much now. He's not as popular as he used to be before.
Yeah, but
because he keeps trying to re-elect himself.
But I will say I've been watching a lot about what's the president of Argentina, Milei. Milei is really turning things around for Argentina, and he seems to have made it past the worst part. And he said he's going to take out the deep chainsaw next to the deep state, meaning he made major cuts already. He's going to cut massive amounts to their government even more, which it's already worked so far. I'm very interested in that project of economic libertarianism in Argentina. There's a lot of other governments are going to learn from Argentina, not necessarily their whole framework, but just bits and parts. He's trying things other governments haven't tried, and he is getting a lot of success. And he is very popular in Argentina right now.
With most people.
Yeah.
But let's see a monarch talk about why digital ID is important. It's a little bit funny that it's a monarch, an actual...
And because we're talking about digital ID today, I just wanted to bring this up again to see how these elites kind of view it. They try to put it in the best possible light, never talking about the dark side of these things. And the dark side are really absolutely dystopian. And where they can take them, it would be okay to bring these things in if we had governments that weren't completely corrupt. Every single government around the entire world is corrupt. There's 180-something countries, I believe. believe, and not one has got it right. Not one can earn the general public's trust completely. Even the ones that are good are corrupt at their core and rotten to their core. Even once you do manage to clean up these governments, if that was ever the case, you need to sustain that for a long period of time to bring trust in before anybody would willingly want digital ID and digital currency and things like this. That's why they're trying to break down the general public around the world and in the West especially, so that they're at the lowest point, and then the solution will be digital ID, digital currency. Oh, we got to clean up crime. Everybody has to have a digital ID so we can identify you.
So Queen Maxima of the Netherlands tells the WEF why digital ID is necessary for verifying jibby-jab status, accessing final services, and distributing government subsidies. This is from Wide Awake Media.
When I started this job, there were actually very little countries in Africa or Latin America that had one ubiquitous type of ID, and certainly that it was digital, and certainly that it was biometric. And we've really worked with all our partners to actually help that being, to grow this. And the interesting part of it is that, yes, it is very necessary for financial services, but not only. Sure. It's also good for school enrollment.
They've done school enrollment. They've had bank accounts without digital IDs for all of history. Now it's important that they absolutely have it. It's not, because we already have a system where we've operated without it, and it may be slower and it may be more inefficient, but it gives you a lot of protections in that.
Also good for health, who actually got a vaccination or not. It's very good to get your subsidies, from the government.
There's the control.
Yes, you need subsidies. You need to let the government control you so they can then pay you off just for the pleasure of doing that.
And she talked directly about the jibby jab right before the subsidies. Yeah. You don't get your jibby jab, you're not going to get your subsidies. That's how all this stuff is interconnected. And right now, some countries don't have the digital ID, don't have all this monitoring, so they don't necessarily know when you have one or the other. Mm-hmm. In this new dystopian digital state, they're going to have complete control potentially.
Yeah. Our dog keeps eating the blanket and trying to take it away.
Yeah, and let's just say when they do bring these digital IDs and digital currencies, you're going to have a short period where it's a lot of good. They'll probably give a UBI or a universal basic income, some kind of stipend out to the general public to win favor before they pull the rug out from underneath and really bring in a lot of the dystopian monitoring, things like this.
And also, let's not forget that here in Mexico, they just passed a whole thing where now we are getting forcibly given digital IDs as well with biometrics. I mean, they announced it, the current government, who wants more and more control, announced it almost at the same time as a new telecommunications bill came in and got approved, where they're now able to track your locations via your devices that you might have to access. They haven't said if yes or no fully, but you might have to access using your digital ID, which is dystopian, and people here don't seem to fully grasp the severity of it. Yes, in Mexico, it might be slower to adopt, or even might not be adopted completely, because we live in chaos and corruption, and it's harder to implement all of these things, but at least that's the idea that what they want to do.
Yeah, but it's not all done through the government, and that's the scary thing here as well. A lot of it is done through corporations. So, for instance, cars are going all electric, and even the ones that are still gasoline have all kinds of electronics and cameras inside them. I could definitely see these corporations mandating you to have a facial scan that's connected to your digital ID in order to access your car every time, so they know if you're speeding, other things of this nature. That's very easy to implement. Everybody has a phone, so in order to access your phone in the future, corporations can very easily make it a necessity to have a facial scan or a digital ID connected into your phone every time you want to unlock your phone.
And Walker says, I really think Bukele's re-election is driven by self-defense rather than his desire to continue, because the IACHR has sworn to put him in jail when he leaves power in 2022. Likewise, I think it's somewhat hypocritical for European countries to criticize this, since they do not have a limit on elections, or the left that defends Cuba, Venezuela, or the left that defends Cuba, Venezuela, China, etc.
Yeah, Bukele did a lot of the hard work that nobody was going to do. So he had that country cleaned up. It was literally almost the murder capital of the world, and now it has one of the lowest crime rates in its hemisphere. That being said, you can't lock them up for that. And if they want to let all these prisoners out with the next person that's elected, imagine if a leftist gets elected or a progressive and they just undo all that. It's going to be absolute chaos. He's done the hard work and he's taken the shots. So even if somebody comes in after him, they just have to maintain kind of what he's done. They can take down a lot of the measures on the general public and stop arresting more people. He's done the hardest part so far. So even if you don't like it, to kind of prosecute him for it, if you want to vote him out. But don't give the man a hard time that turned literally the murder capital of the world into one of the safest countries in the world.
The ending capital of the world.
The what? Yeah.
The ending.
Okay.
Walker says, I'm not going to lie, I don't like Bukele very much, but he's really the lesser of two evils. Here, the left often says they'll never free criminals if they win the elections, but in Spain, the left freed ETA terrorists in order to have more votes in the Congress.
Yeah. Imagine that vote. That's not just a voting bloc, you let that out of jail. So let's just make this completely clear. The left gets in, and if they free all those criminals, they not only have those votes, but those can now be a violent independent wing of that left-wing party to force people in that country to vote a certain way. So now they have an enforcement arm outside of the military to kind of rig elections. We see something similar here in Mexico, where there is organized organizations that really have a huge influence on the elections. There's a lot of people that their lives end during these elections. Politicians' lives get ended. These aren't normal elections, and this isn't a normal political situation. Something similar could happen in El Salvador if all those prisoners are released, not just to get their votes, but to use them as an enforcement arm to get to force the population into a certain way of voting as well. Okay, let's go into the next.
And this is kind of like also still about digital ID. So from Biometric Update, the Hashgraph Group launches SSI digital identity platform on Hedera.
Yeah, and I just grabbed this because I wanted an article about digital IDs and stuff like this. So let's kind of read about it. I didn't have a chance to read this article yet.
A new self-sovereign identity SSI platform for issuing and verifying digital credentials has been launched by Switzerland-based the Hashgraph Group, the ID Trust platform.
1 second. And you notice how this is a private corporation again. And then we have the government level, the private corporation level, the app store level, the phone level, multiple corporations working together with governments, then multiple governments working together, such as in the EU. And then you have global organizations such as the UN working together. Even if you get past one of these levels, they have so much redundancy in there, they're going to make sure they pull this thing off.
Sorry, I'm fighting with the dog. The ID Trust platform utilizes the Hedera distributed ledger as a trust layer, gives users digital identities that are portable, interoperable, and provide complete control over their personal data, according to a company announcement. THG says the launch demonstrates its commitment to enabling a truly open and vendor-agnostic digital identity ecosystem that supports alignment with national and international identity initiatives.
Yeah, in one moment, I have no qualms for them saying, yeah, it's totally secure. Yeah, this is how they breed this idea of safety. The corporation itself may protect your ID. There's no guarantee they will, but let's just pretend for a second the corporation is going to protect your ID. There's laws in countries where these corporations have to have a backdoor and give all this information to the government. So even on the surface, as the corporation is protecting your ID, they can only protect it to such an illegal extent until the government comes in there and demands this information.
And Hedera delivers enterprise-grade performance, high security standards, low and predictable fees, a negative carbon footprint, because that's very important, and technical maturity, the company says. ID Trust is designed to align with digital identity initiatives, including EIDAS 2.0, the UK's Digital Identity and Attributes Trust Framework, DIATF, and the National EID System Switzerland is planning. The launch of ID Trust falls between the June announcement that the Swiss Federal Council has launched a consultation procedure to set the regulations for its national digital ID, with an ordinance and a referendum on the system set for September 28.
Yeah. And they want all this data. You are becoming the product. The governments want all this digital data that's gathered through the digital ID, through the digital currency, to know what you're watching, know what you're thinking, make an AI profile of each individual citizen, and then put guardrails on the speech that they have access to, so they can basically generally manipulate the general public into only having the beliefs that they want them to have. It's a giant psyop put against not only the global population, but individual populations. And it's really being tested out in a lot of different ways in a lot of different countries. And the countries that are more successful, or the plans that are more successful, will be adopted by other countries.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I mean, the United Nations is also getting in on board and trying to do their own thing. From Wide Awake Media as well, the United Nations is creating a task force that will focus on the effects of what it considers to be mis- and disinformation, those little words as always, about the globalist organization's ability to deliver on its mandate. The announcement to create the Disinformation Task Force was buried deep within the United Nations' first ever global risk report, which lists mis- and disinformation as a top vulnerability, mirroring that of the WEF.
And again, now you can see, like, the World Economic Forum is one layer. It's a private organization. And then you have the UN, which is a global organization. Then you have the EU, which is a regional organization. Then you have the UK, which is an organization within a single country.
Yeah.
And then you have the corporations on top of that. Then you have independent NGOs on top of that. I've just named about 7 off of the top of my head. There's probably another 7 I don't even know about. The amount of redundancy and the way they're building this thing in, this is a top priority for them.
And then they continue, but as we comb through documents and speeches from the UN, we find that addressing misinformation and disinformation has little to do with getting to the truth and everything to do with controlling narratives that could impede progress on the UN's work. Enter the new task team to focus on the effects of mis- and disinformation on the United Nations mandate delivery. And it says this report has delivered valuable analysis on risk importance, preparedness, and vulnerability. Based on these insights, the Secretary General commits to immediately create a task team to strengthen the United Nations system's capacity to address risks in the information ecosystem. The team will focus on the effects of mis- and disinformation on the United Nations mandate delivery, including through research, risk assessment, and response strategies. By December 2025, finalize the standard operating procedures that strengthen the United Nations system anticipation of and response to complex global shocks. Let's remember a global shock from 2020, in line with Action 54 of the Pact for the Future.
And I did watch the entire they have one big summit every year, the UN, and it lasts multiple days. And I actually spent days watching that thing. And I'm just going to give a forewarning of that whole thing I watched. There was one common thing that was, number one, mis- and disinformation, but number 2 was youth. They're starting to recruit youth, pay youth, so that the youth will talk to the world, whether that's through NGOs, through protest organizations, independent youth with their own YouTube stations. They're going to fund all this, and every country around the world, they have a basic web of how to do this. Oh, you can just come back. Just don't give her the peanut butter. Sorry, our dog is going a little crazy.
Thing is, if dogs swallow strings, it's not good for them.
Okay, whenever you're ready to come back.
You can be by yourself.
Well, I got the camera on your chair, actually.
Why?
Because we're waiting. Everybody's waiting for you.
The dog's waiting for me.
And she's back.
See? You did fine just by yourself.
Okay, let's continue to go with this.
I'm just trying, because if you didn't know, if dogs swallow strings, it can tie up in their intestines and they could pass away.
We have a blanket that she lays on, and she chews the heck out of that blanket.
Yes, and we usually give her a toy with peanut butter to distract her.
Okay, let's get back into this.
Because she likes the attention. Do I keep reading this one or go to the next?
That was a thread, correct?
Yes. Do you want me to keep reading the thread?
Did I have an article connected with that particular thing?
Kind of. It's about the European Union.
Okay, yeah, we can go into the European Union. So it started with the UN, which is a global organization. Now we're going to go into the next layer, which is the EU's layer, but it's very similar. It's a lot of redundancies with these NGOs and organizations. Trump did do a big favor when he defunded USAID. A lot of these organizations were funded through the USAID. Not all of them. The UN has mandatory funding that comes in from every country. So it's hard to kind of defund that arm. But a lot of these layers were defunded through the defunding of USAID. That being said, there are new arms like Palantir that are currently being funded. So as soon as you take one out, you start funding another. Palantir is being funded through Trump. So even though I like Trump, I do understand everything he's doing isn't perfect.
So, for example, it says information integrity and countering foreign information manipulation and interference, FIMI, foreign information manipulation and interference, including disinformation, is a growing security and foreign policy threat for the European Union. The European External Action Service, EEAS, has taken a leading role in addressing this challenge. We have significantly built up capabilities to identify, analyze, and respond to FIMI since 2015.
Yeah, and a lot of people want to see that NATO fall apart, number one, but the EU fall apart, number two, meaning each country puts their own sovereignty first and no longer allows an unelected government to dictate to them what their policies are and laws are going to be. That would be great, because what would happen is countries that say the EU fell apart, every country was responsible for their own sovereignty and their own free speech laws. The countries that had more free speech laws, you would see a natural migration to those countries. And that's why the EU likes to have this dictate across the board.
They say we have significantly built up capabilities to identify, analyze, and respond since 2015, when EU member states first called on the EEAS to address Russian disinformation campaigns in the context of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Our aim is to deliver more targeted, impactful, and coordinated responses to FIMI in order to protect the EU's common foreign and security policy, democratic processes, and citizens, as well as our partners worldwide.
It's very interesting that they bring Ukraine up, because that was one of the biggest propaganda campaigns in modern EU history, other than the jibby jab. That was probably either number one or number two. The scale and scope in which they went after that, and the amount of monetization they put into that level of propaganda was a little bit crazy. I watched both the Ukrainian propaganda as well as the Russian propaganda. The Russian propaganda, they've kind of learned over time to generally tell the truth. They put Putin out there as a lawyer, and he's trying to really win the hearts and minds of the global South through what is legal on an international basis. That's why every move he has done in that war, he has justified legally through the UN and the United States' own doctrine. I understand they were the ones to strike first, but he was able to actually justify it through the West's own doctrine. So it's hard for them to say that he doesn't have the legitimacy to do what he's doing, when the United States did the exact same thing in Iraq and Afghanistan and Iraq number 2 and a lot of other countries. He actually used the United States as an example and their legal framework to address his attack. So you can call it propaganda, but at least that propaganda is based upon legal framework. A lot of the Ukrainian propaganda wasn't based upon framework and things.
And you've spent basically since the war started just tracking it, so you know about this a lot more than I do.
Yeah, like I don't have a dog in the fight, but I didn't really pay attention to Russia a lot before that, and man, I have a real respect for Russian propaganda, because it's actually based upon legal framework and truths, so they can actually justify it. Well, a lot of Western propaganda, it's based upon emotion, and it's really geared towards females. So.
And then Russia, sorry. Walker says, UN still going on about the disinformation. Why don't they just change their name to the Chinese Communist Party of the UN and say we want to be the CCP of the West?
Yeah, it's really strange what's going on, because the CCP used to have extreme censorship, and they still do, but it's coming to a point where the EU is getting more censorship than China. And I think we're at that point right now, because what I noticed is the UK specifically is trying to ban VPNs now. In China, VPNs you're allowed to have, and that's how the Chinese actually get news from the rest of the world. The government hasn't banned VPNs or enforced it very well over there. Well, the UK, if they manage to actually ban VPNs and then enforce this with imprisonment, they've now kind of surpassed the CCP, which is crazy in a lot of aspects. Not every aspect, but when it's coming to censorship, it seems like Russia and China are actually allowing less censorship, while the EU is trying to get more of it. Now, I understand that Russia and China started up here with censorship, and the UK and the EU were down here, meaning they had a lot of free speech. And now they're almost parallel, and it's starting to get scary.
And also from Reuters, German task force wanted to tackle foreign meddling before the election. Oh, this is from 2024. Was this the one you wanted me to get? Maybe I got the wrong one.
No, this is fun. I kind of brought this up because censorship in the EU, one of the big ways they use it is to meddle in elections. So it's the EU really trying to put barriers on what's acceptable for political talk. And if you're outside of those bounds, you're not eligible to run in certain elections. This is what they did to the Romanian candidate.
And in France, to Marine Le Pen.
And in France. And then they tried to do it to Conor McGregor. It didn't allow him to run for a certain position. Like, it's getting crazy over there, and there's a lot of
let's be very
things
clear.
that people don't even know, and people that are being disqualified before their name even gets on the ballots. The ones we hear about are the ones that are on the ballot, win the election, and then the election is disqualified, and a re-election is taking place with their name then taken off the ballot. That makes headlines, but when you disqualify somebody from even running in the initial election, it goes under the radar, and they do it legally through saying far-right views such as immigration, you're not allowed to talk about. If you do, that's a hate crime. Oh, you've committed a hate crime, you can no longer run in politics.
And we have clip that you selected from one of your favorite people. It started playing before I wanted it to, but from James Lindsay, anti-communist, says, in this excellent clip, Konstantin Kisin demonstrates exactly how we can and should be proud of our culture in front of the very hostile crowd, boldly, unapologetically, and honestly. He doesn't go mad, edgy, or wild, speaks firmly, and tells the truth.
Yeah, and a lot of things I like Konstantin, and there's a lot of things that I don't like Konstantin on. He's a bit of a shill on certain subjects. I won't bring it up. But when he's right and he's on point, he really makes a fool out of a lot of people. In this case, he's definitely right.
Let's be very clear. The reason there is no slavery in the world today, I mean, there's a lot of slavery in the world today, but in the parts of the world where there's no slavery, is because the British Empire ended it. That's why there is no slavery.
And the crowd just uproars. Rah, rah, rah. This is a great point he's about to make. I made this point with some liberal friends of ours one day, and they just went crazy. The United States is based upon slavery. That's all it is. I'm like, no, they ended it. A lot of these other countries in the Middle East and in Africa, modern day slavery is running rampant, and it's just not published a lot.
That is...
So,
well,
that's going to
look, the fact that you are uneducated about history doesn't mean it's funny. So let me educate you now. Let me educate you now. I know that the woke narrative and the anti-Western narrative on slavery... Well, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you? You're not practicing free speech very well, are you? The moment I say something you don't like, you're not practicing free speech very well, are you, sir?
Thank you.
I thought you were all about free speech. How about you let me finish my point?
Let's finish the point, and then I'm going to...
Now,
and then I will
the
bring it
woke
to
narrative and the anti-Western narrative on slavery is there was no slavery, and then the British or the Americans came along and they started slavery. Slaves were the first good that were ever traded between human beings. Ever. They were the first good ever traded. Native Americans had slaves, Ottomans had slaves, African had slaves. Everybody had slaves. The reason there is no slavery in the West is the British Empire, having practiced slavery for a long time, like everybody else, ended it. Not only that, the British Empire then spent a tremendous amount of blood and treasure to force the Middle Eastern slave traders, with the trans-Saharan slave trade being much worse than the transatlantic slave trade. In terms of the number of people who were killed, in terms of the way that they were treated, in terms of how long it lasted, it was much worse. And we spent a tremendous amount of blood and treasure to stop it. That's the true history of slavery.
And they just wanted to cut him off, and not get his points across.
And that's why they're so scared of free speech, because some truth may come out and seep through and make people maybe change their minds. And they can't have that, so they have to interrupt, they have to crosstalk, they have to yell at the top of their little lungs, and they can't let you speak because you might say something that goes against their either worldview, narrative, feelings, emotions, whatever you want. But with slavery, the word Slavs comes from Slavic, who were also
Were
enslaved
Eastern
at some
European
point.
slaves.
Yes.
They were white
The
slaves.
Slavic trade.
Yeah.
So.
And the Middle East is the one that propagated slavery into a global empire, and that's how a lot of their wealth was drawn. They went into Africa, took the African slaves, they took the Eastern European slaves, they took Asian slaves, and they traded them all around because they were in the middle, and they knew how to transport them and had easy access to all these regions because they were directly in the middle of all these regions. That's how you got the globalization of slavery and the intercontinental drift of slavery as well. Eventually, the Europeans tried to copy them. It wasn't nearly as successful as them, although they stopped that global slave trade of the global slave trade. Regionally, they're still very much involved. Okay.
And also, human space traffic space king still continues to happen and still continues to lead to very similar conclusions.
Yeah, and Africa has open slave markets still to this day. It's been exposed on YouTube a few times. They take the videos down quickly after because they don't want that narrative kind of getting out.
And Walker says, it's like Europe is becoming a place with censorship of freedom of expression, but without even the security of countries like China.
Yeah. That's,
and that's why they need to censor everybody.
And this was the point that was being brought up before. They were saying the Germans back in World War II had massive amounts of censorship, but at least they gave you the security and they cleaned up the streets in response. I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying that's good at all, but what I am saying is at least you got security in the streets. Like, the Chinese are at least censoring, but they're trying to clean up the streets and giving wealth to their people.
Oh,
like,
sort of.
I would rather I want free speech, but we also want security.
But I would not trade free speech for security.
No.
And speaking of, I would not trade free speech for security, let's go to Canada. So from Table Salt 13, Carney Liberals are trying to sell major Canadian infrastructure to American companies because they know all of the Canadian companies who can pull this stuff off have left, like Brookfield. Brookfield is Mark Carney, the Prime Minister's asset management company.
It's the largest asset management company in Canada. It's Canada's BlackRock, basically. Yep. That being said...
And he moved it to the States before getting elected.
This is, I believe, the Canadian finance minister, if I'm not mistaken. That being said, he's trying to get investment for Canada. He's going to America for the investment when all these American companies have already left Canada because they have had headquarters and other buildings in Canada, which they are now shutting down because of the policies of Canada. I understand, yeah, you might be able to get investment from Canada, but you're literally going to the people that just de-invested and trying to give propaganda to the Canadian people. It's going to be all right.
And we passed in Canada our version of the president's One Big Beautiful Bill. It's called the One Canadian Economy Act, which we think will unlock up to $500 billion of investment in Canada for things like pipelines, port infrastructure, mines, all of which offer huge opportunities.
So he's mentioning pipelines, oil infrastructure, mines, he's mentioning all the industries the Canadian legislature has almost legislated out of existence in Canada, even though they have a huge wealth of these resources. They can't access them, except when they do access them, there's a huge fee to pay, either to Parliament, to the government, to NGOs, to other organizations through legislation that has been enacted. So it's untenable to actually start these projects.
And there are some of the few actual exports that Canada could use, but they're not allowing them to.
The same things kind of happened in the United States, where the Chinese funded a lot of NGOs to have lobbyists to enact legislation so they couldn't access oil in Alaska and a lot of their mining resources. This is why Trump came in and stripped a lot of the laws out of, what's the organization again?
USAID?
No.
EPA?
Yeah, the EPA. That's why a lot of these EPA laws are currently getting stripped. The EPA was weaponized against the U.S. government for the past decade through the Chinese to put in legislation that they wouldn't be able to access these things. All this stuff still exists in Canada, and Mark Carney isn't going to take any of it down.
To American businesses as well. So we think there's a great deal to work on together.
All right, Minister, we'll...
That's it.
Okay.
And then the next story, we do have to go to RUMBLE quickly and even though it is our cover story, because the image that we're going to show, YouTube would not be very happy with. I'm not very happy with having seen it, but Walker, before we go, says this is what I would call the therapeutic censorship. They literally don't want to hear or discuss the topic. They simply want to silence it. This is pure psychologism.
Yeah.
And that's why they come up with concepts and notions like, oh, words are violence, which means if you say words that I find violent or that hurt my feelings, now I can enact actual violence against you. And we see a lot of Antifa using those tactics to beat people on the streets.
Well, what you're seeing is population is generally divided directly in half because half the population is eating up the propaganda hand over fist and just listening to the government like they're God. And that's where they're getting their morals from. And the other half is rejecting it. That's why this digital ID is so important. They have to create digital profiles for every citizen so they can give individualized propaganda and arguments for every citizen to tear apart their mind and so they can get complete control. This is what this AI infrastructure is trying to bring in. I was watching a special on it the other day talking about individualized propaganda, which is crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people are considered like, oh, it's individualized ads or whatever. But what happens when the infrastructure is actually being monitored and controlled by the government itself?
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, we're going over to RUMBLE. Thank you for being here over on YouTube. We'll see you over in a few seconds on RUMBLE, same channel name, and the stream is already up over there.
If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers.
On YouTube.
On
Thank
YouTube.
You.
Okay, where's Rumble here?
Let me go to get the chat.